Okay, let's start. Continue with the architect. Who is the architect? Previously, I mentioned about the architect who act as the superintending officer, or we can say this is the project manager who work on behalf of the client. So we have done that. Okay, the architect, the SO, and engineer that I did mention earlier is acting as the is actually acting as the representative of the client. So now we go to the architect who actually carry out the work as the independent consultant. Okay, so who is the architect? It is a person who plan, who design, and oversees the construction building. The first person who need to design and translate the requirement by the client is the architect. When the client say, okay, I want four-story building, I want four-story building where one building one where you have a four-story building with four-story parking. So that one will be translated by the architect. Maybe architect will provide a few design, and it depends on the client which one they would like to choose based on the requirement. So basically, if you look at the key point here, who plans, design, and oversees the construction building. Okay, when you see the word design, means they have to provide their own drawing. They are licensed people and they are responsible to construct the building based on requirement by the client. Okay, let's move to the role of the architect in project development stage. Okay, when we mention about project development stage, as what I did mention earlier, in this case, we are focusing on the pre-contract stage. But of course, in general, you need to know what will be the role of the architect in the whole project development stage. For example, if you look at number one, when the client give instruction on their intention to do the project, to carry out the work, so the client will give the information on the general specification. So at the pre-contract stage, the architect is required to prepare the design based on the client project brief. We can say it is according to the specification given by the client. And in this case, the architect also will carry out feasibility study. This is normally together with the estate manager and also uh, together with the QS, because the main content of feasibility study are information of the market research, information of the population, the information of the land issue, and so on. Whether the project is viable to proceed or whether the project has to be stopped, all of that will be completed together with the estate manager, valuer, QS, and architect. Okay, so in terms of the design development, definitely architect is required to prepare the design, produce the drawing. So in terms of the drawing, you can see there are a few types of the drawing: outline, proposal drawing, schematic drawing, and then in detail they prepare detailed drawing and specification. So the final complete drawing we call as detailed construction drawing. So the architect is responsible to prepare this because he or she is the designer. And then once the architect design, he or she also required to consult with other professional, especially the engineer, the ID, interior designer, the landscape architect, and so on. They have to also responsible to submit the plan to the local authority to get approval, because every single design must be certified and must be confirmed by the local authority or by the client. Okay. In this case, the architect also may get involved with the initial budgeting. Why? Anyone know why? Because we may need to consider the budget in the design. Let's say the client say, I have 500,000. I would like to design. Let's say I have 500 billion, for example. I would like to have one mall. Then that is one requirement. Another scenario is the client just mentioned, can you design this one for me? Then only you come up with the cost. Okay, then only I would like to know. Then maybe few pieces of the drawing have been prepared by the architect, then the client will choose. So that is based on the design. Either you have the money, they mention you must design based on 500 million only, or you have the design, then only we come up with the money. Okay, so it's either way. That's why architect also involved in the initial budgeting, setting the initial budgeting. It depends on the type of the client that they have. At the construction stage, it is acting as the SO, or we can say contract administrator. They will carry out the inspection of the work, and you can see this one as what I had been explained earlier when you appoint the architect as the contract administrator under SO previously. So they are responsible to issue the certificate of payment. They are giving instruction, architect instruction, giving the the advice in terms of the variation of the work that need to be carried out. Then basically the architect will be the project manager that help to coordinate the work with the contractor. Okay, normally if you have the meeting, or we can say site meeting, so architect will be the chairperson to handle what and to check what will be the progress from the client. They would like to listen from the contractor, and then if let's say there are any new information that they would like to deliver as the representative from the client, they will share. Okay, so that is at the construction stage. During the completion stage, they will issue the certificate of the practical completion. Okay, so issuance of the certificate all will be carried out by architect, who actually act as the SO. Okay, involved in test and commissioning, obtain the clearance from the government sector or any local authority or any body that is handle or related with the process to complete the work on the construction site. And then architect also issue the instruction to make the good defects. This is actually normal practice. When the contractor has completed the work, there are lists of the defect that have been required to be checked. Then they have to issue the instruction to the contractor to do so. Okay, and then to check or inspect the remedial works done, this is supposed to be done by the MC or main contractor after they give the issuance of the making good defects list, to issue the certificate of payment, the certificate of making good defects. All the certificate will be released by the architect. Okay, released by the architect in that particular project. So you can see the word certificate here and there. When you learn in detail standard form of contract, you can see all this certificate must be clearly issued by the architect according to the progress. Okay, this is at the completion stage. Now, if we focus on the preliminary design stage, this is the example of the drawing that required to be prepared, the outline drawing. Maybe they plot, this is the area that we have to develop. And then you have conceptual drawing, schematic drawing, how the building looks like, what is the shape, what will be the general material, how many story. They will translate the requirement by the client. Okay, this is the example of the detailed drawing. What you will learn in the measurement subject, that is the drawing prepared by the architect. Okay, the elevation drawing, the section drawing, the floor plan, what you can see from the top, the overall site plan. So this one considered as construction drawing or detailed drawing. So they have to prepare stage by stage, conceptual, schematic, and detail. So that will be the flow. This is another example of the detailed drawing. You can see the architect will identify the specification. Okay, if I zoom in, can you see here example that the staircase detail, this information, every single size, every single finishing must be really written clearly by the architect. So that is known as detailed drawing. All the specification, labeling, what material, what is the size, what will be the brand that need to be used, okay, the shape, all of that will be prepared by the architect. Is it okay, class? Can you follow? This is the example of the completion certificate of practical completion prepared by the architect. Okay, example only. If you handle different project, you can see that the pattern of the certificate may be different. Okay, I move to the next one. Example of the completion stage. At the completion stage, what certificate will be issued by the architect. After completion stage, what will be the role of the architect here? And in the defects liability period, the architect will issue the instruction to rectify the defects. Can you see this one? This is possible. Okay, after the completion after completion date, normally in the construction commercial project, yeah, it is not the individual project. Let's say you handle one project, completion is 25th of December. So in normal construction process, you have the defect liability period. We call this one as DLP. Let's say I give you this question in quiz. What is DLP? DLP is defect liability period. It is the timeline given for the contractor to complete any defects available after the completion date. Okay, maybe I think nowadays it's about 18 months. They calculate by month. After 9 months, after 12 months, originally 12 months. I think nowadays the latest is 18 months. Means, let's say the occupant already occupy the building, then they find that the defects, the cracks is here, toilet cannot flush, they are the window had been damaged. So that is within the liability period. Or we can say, to simply for you to understand, is like warranty period, but the technical term is defects liability period. Okay, so during the defects liability period, the architect can give instruction to the contractor to do the rectification work. Okay, based on their own checklist or based on the complaint by the occupants. Okay, so they also after that will issue the certificate of making good. They will issue the list of the remedial works that need to be carried out by the contractor as well. Okay, I move to the next one, the project engineer. Who is the project engineer? Or sometimes we call this one, who is the engineer? Okay, your first impression, engineer is the designer. Okay, an engineer also can be the SO or superintending officer. If we call consulting engineer, means they are independent engineer who work at the consulting company. Okay, they are building or project engineer. They can be the engineer who consulting engineer also can be the structural engineer, can be M&E engineer, but they are involved in planning, in design, and in constructing, operating, renovation, maintenance, especially if you deal with the system. Then they are also responsible for the system that they have suggested, especially for M&E engineer. Okay, as well as their impact on the surrounding environment. Okay, we have this type of the engineer available. Civil engineer, sometimes you can see CNS. It is actually the same thing, civil and structural engineer. Electrical engineer, or sometimes electrical and mechanical engineer, M&E work. Okay, sometimes they're separate, sometimes they come together, sometimes they are in one company, but they are all responsible in this particular work: plan, design, construct, and maintain the operation. Okay, let's go one by one briefly, then you can find further. Civil engineer for the building structure and the foundation. Definitely for the foundation of the building, they are concerned with the structural integrity of the proposed building. But for this structural engineer, it's not only for the building, yeah, because let's say you deal with the civil engineering work. What are the example of civil engineering work? Road work, dam, airport, railway station. These are all civil engineering scope of the work. So they are responsible to design the structure, not only for the building, but also infra work or civil engineering work area. What they need to do, they must ensure that the building or the structure that they design is capable to withstand the different loads and pressure that must be imposed. That's why we call it as structural engineer. They design, they must consider the load. They design, they must ensure that the building is stable, the structure is stable. We don't want to design, suddenly the building is collapsed and cracking here and there. Okay, these include the dead loads, the weight loads, the forcing, the apply loads, and then the calculation of the occupants who occupy, the finishing equipment, and so on. And also when they design, they need to consider the pressure, the heat expansion, and also contraction from the material that they design, and also from the material that they design, that they suggest in terms of the size, in terms of the shape. So basically the civil engineer has the calculation to do certain design. They have to deal with this kind of work. Okay, planning, drawing, and handle and be responsible for what they have designed. Okay, so the second one, M&E, mechanical engineering. What are the example of mechanical work? Aircon, sewerage system, and then if you go to the mall, you can see elevator system. That means lift. Okay, elevator is lift, or maybe mechanical transportation in the building. For example, we have escalator. In airport, normally you have travelator. Okay, and then if you go to the mall, you have travelator that is slanting or travelator that is flat. In airport, they have flat, right? So that you don't have to walk, you just have to stand, and then it is like actually for the long distance area in one single floor. Okay, so that will be the task that need to be considered by the mechanical engineer. They design the system, so they need to know that the system is suitable, and then they need to consider the services is sufficient to the occupant. The services they are referring to the system that they design. They have to consider the inspection, the operation process, and then of course in any M&E works, testing is very important. Okay, when they complete design, when the contractor already install, they need to check whether this system is working or not. Okay, let's say the system, they design the sanitation wastewater, and because of that system you cannot flush in the toilet, so that would be one of the um, responsibility that you have to check whether that one is the default by the engineer who is the designer, or the default by the contractor who wrongly construct. Okay, then next one, the last one for the engineer, we have electrical engineer who actually design the distribution of the distribution of the lighting, how many lighting required for that particular area, how many points for the socket, what type of lighting required, how many how the installation of the cable, the wire, distribution board, all electrical work including the power plant. That is the scope of the electrical engineering design. Okay, in general, if I ask you what would be the general scope, you can refer to this statement. Okay, you can refer to slide number 52, because all these engineer will have to plan. Either they are civil engineer, M&E engineer, they have to plan, they have to design, they have to provide the drawing, they have to consider the type, they have to consider the maintenance, operation, and also correct installation by the contractor. Okay, so sometimes if we deal with the M&E works, we are dealing with with the specialized contractor. Okay, I move to the next one. This is what you really need to do to understand, because we are QS. Okay, so I believe that you have this impression when you have learned about introduction to QS. What is another name of the QS? Cost engineer, cost estimator, cost coordinator, all about cost. And then in the real world, sometimes we did not call QS as cost engineer only, we call them as the contract executive, quantity surveyor who act as the contract executive, cost analysis, project coordinator, and so on. There are a lot of names, but you have to know what will be the scope of the quantity surveyor. Okay, they are responsible. Quantity surveyor is the construction professional. Engineer also construction professional. How you want to know whether we are professional or not? You can check whether that task or that party had been controlled in terms of the duties and responsibility by the professional body. When we say professional body, means QS has our own professional body. In Malaysia, we have Board of Quantity Surveying. Okay, for the engineer, we have Board of Engineers Malaysia. In China, what do we call that? Is there any agency? Is there any agency or professional body who control the professionalism of the engineer or QS? Yan Chin Tao? Yan Jin Tao, do you have the specific name for that? Yan Jin Tao, can you respond? I have two international students from China here, right? Li Zhongchang and Yan Jin Tao. What is the name of the professional body? Is there any professional body in China who control the obligation by the QS or by the engineer? Do you have that specific professional body? Do you have that in your country? Do you have that or not? Or you did not know? Yan Jin Tao and who is another one? Li Zhongcheng. You have. So what do we call that? What do you call that? In Malaysia, we have BQSM, we have RISM. You don't know. Maybe you can search for it, because if you are going to work in your own country, you have to register once you finish or once you graduate. Yeah, once you graduate, you have to register and become the professional. Okay, so basically the QS is responsible or qualified person to advise all aspects regarding to the cost and contractual administration. I will say that we must be very good in contract. We must understand every single word in the standard form of contract. And in fact, when you learn about contract, if the people have the issue or any conflict, you must know what will be the clause that we have to refer to advise the people who have the conflict between the client and the contractor, or maybe the client has the issue with the with the attitude of the contractor that did not carry out the work every day, or maybe the contractor suspend the work. Is the QS able to give the advice? The answer must be yes. Okay, QS must be able to give the advice any aspect regarding to the contractual administration. Okay, and if let's say you are not be able to give the contractual administration advice, you may only have the alternative dispute resolution that you may apply later. But in general, this is the role of the QS. This is the role of the QS. Okay, maybe this China Construction Engineering Cost Management. Okay, so that will be the name. That means after you graduate, you may apply to become the graduate member for that association. Then you can be. Then they are requirement that you have to fulfill. You have to prepare maybe logbook. You have to handle certain type of the project to become the professional quantity surveyor. Okay, what I would like to highlight here also is, if you are working as the quantity surveyor, there are few areas. You can become the professional quantity surveyor as the independent consultant, or you can work on behalf of the contractor. If you would like to become professional quantity surveyor, means you have to work in the construction firm. Okay, if or you can also work on behalf of the contractor. If you work on behalf of the contractor, either you are working at the site QS, okay, or you can work at the contractor for the HQ or their administrative work. Quantity surveyor on behalf of the contractor or consultant. At the same time, let's say you would like to work as the QS in the government sector, you also can do so. Okay, so QS can work in the consultant company, in the contractor company, and as the government in the government sector. If in the government sector, maybe your role is different. If you are the QS who work in the government sector, then you have maybe to prepare the tender. All the tender issue must be prepared by you. Evaluation of the tender must be prepared by you. Okay, but sometimes the QS client is only become the administrator. Sometimes they appoint the independent QS or independent consultant to be the advisor for that particular project. So that can be one of the role. Okay, so basic rule of the quantity surveyor, this one I think everyone know, dispute resolution, as what I did mention previously. I give you example, tender preparation, anything regarding to the cost, planning, estimation, life cycle costing, feasibility study means at the beginning of the stage, and then value management also at the design stage. Okay, Mm. And another way you can see the quantity surveying is the professional working within the construction industry concerned with the building cost and contract. One of the opinion, and you can see if you search the definition of the quantity surveyor from different author, from different perspective of the people, you can see the definition is different. But for us in Malaysia, you can see the quantity surveyor definition and the role in the Board of Quantity Surveyor website. They show you the list of basic services and the role and responsibility for the quantity surveyor. And in fact, for the QS, we have our own act. We have the QS Act. Act means a regulation that we have to follow if we would like to become the professional QS. Okay, when you have something, regulation that you have to follow, means you have to follow if you would like to become the professional QS. Okay, that one also can be checked in the act and also in the website. In terms of the services, this is actually repeated, but this one is in detail: cost estimate, tendering, procurement, tenders, valuation of the tender. This is normally either done by the government sector, QS government, or if the government appoint the specialist consultant to evaluate the submission by the contractor, then they have to do. The word evaluation of tender means when the contractor submit or submit the bidding, then we have to evaluate which contractor is suitable for this particular project. I give you one example. Let's say Zhongwei, Jingle, Kam Sun Chi, Zon Cheng, four of you submit the bidding of the tender. Okay, you submit to Eun Jung Kit. Let's say Eun Jung Kit now working as the QS in the government sector. So now Eun Jung Kit, what you have to do? You have to evaluate whether Zhongwei or Jingler or Sun Chi is suitable for that particular project. You have to evaluate maybe by cost. Maybe you have to evaluate maybe by reputation. You have to evaluate maybe by looking at the experience. So that is what we have to learn later. We have one topic, evaluation of the tender. So that is one of the role by the QS to do so. Okay, Junkit, just want to give the overview to you all. If you are responsible to evaluate the tender, this is what you have to do. We cannot only think about the money, but we have to think about another issue. Okay? Okay, Zhongwei? Example. This is only example. Okay? Because at least before we go for the detail on the tender, I would like you to have the overview. What is tender? It is the process to get the contractor. It is the process for you to get the suitable person to carry out the works. Okay, another basic services is preparation of the formal contract. This is according to the SF standard form of contract, standard form of contract. And then QS also has to prepare the interim evaluation and interim payment. Okay, interim evaluation means you go to the site, evaluate how many percent of the work done completed by the contractor. Then you have to prepare the claim. Once you prepare the claim, you have to submit the claim to the client because the payment in the construction is done by progress. Interim here are referring to the progress of the work, and normally our practice is monthly payment. Okay, so who is required to prepare the interim evaluation? QS. Who is required to submit the claim? QS. Okay, so the claim submission by QS contractor. Now, who is evaluate the submission claim? QS, who work on behalf of the client. QS who work on behalf of the client, whether that QS is attached with the client or whether the QS is appointed by the client as the independent consulting firm to handle that project, then he is required to evaluate the submission of the interim claim or interim payment from the contractor. Okay, preparation of the financial statement and preparation of the final account. That one you cannot see. That is, final account means final claim, evaluation of the final claim before the project have been handed. These are the supplementary services. They have to prepare schedule of rate. This is based on estimating. contractual claims, for the litigation. Anyone know what is litigation? Do you know what is litigation, class? Litigation means what? Tan Chin Fong? Is Tan Chin Fong here? Litigation means what? Litigation means action to the court. Let's say there are issues with the contractor and the client, and there are dispute happen, so you have to consider that as well. Pre-qualification or evaluation of the contractor, preparation of that services also, the issue or the services that you can do, any expenditure on the that is expenditure for that particular project, especially if you work on behalf of the contractor. You have to be very careful on this, because the contractor will consider the contractor will check what is the cash flow, how much money that have been invested, whether we have sufficient profit from this particular project, and so on. Okay, you have to get the correct supplier so that you did not spend so much money for that material. So that will be one of the tasks or role that need to be carried out by the QS. Valuation of the insurance, sometimes they have to choose the correct company, they have to get the quotation. Okay, full scope of the quantity surveying in the turnkey project. This is normally for the new method where we have to appoint the contractor as one single entity. So the QS has to give the advice on that. Comparative cost study during the design stage. This one, in case architect give design 1 and then design 2, design 3, they have few options, for example. So maybe in the actual scenario, you may need to prepare maybe the design uh, had been given, so you have to come up with the cost. Then you have to mention, and you have to give the advice to the client which one is profitable, or maybe which one is having you have to invest more. Okay, so that is comparative cost studies during the design stage. You can also involve in the project management. Projection of the estimated development, also edit whatever related to the cost and budgeting, right? Nowadays, you can see that the role of the QS had been expanded, not only basic role, but nowadays we have BIM. You can see here BIM. A lot of QS now become the BIM manager. Sometimes they become the accountant for that particular construction company. We also can involve in the maintenance administration, especially for the cost budgeting, data analysis, and then giving the advice on the new construction project. Okay, analysis, insolvency services. These are the new development of the services for the QS work. Okay, so in summary, you can see this is another highlight what had been explained earlier. Okay, this one had been highlighted earlier, but it is shown in the diagram manner. You can see in diagram what would be the role of the QS in pre-contract and after the contract had been done, or after the contract have been started. So this is under project stages. For the post-contract, in this slide you can see at the pre-contract stages. Okay, so post-contract, we deal with the evaluation of the site, we deal with the money. If there are any dispute, we have to settle the dispute. Okay, anything regarding to the payment, final payment, claim. This one also claim. Another one, don't forget contractual contract advice, especially when the dispute happen. Okay. Okay, I think this is the second last before we go to the contractor. So next one, we go to the project manager. So basically the project manager that I would like to highlight here is the project manager for the whole phases. It can be the project manager for that specific project, and it also can be the project manager who work on behalf of the contractor. Okay, so if you are handling any of the project, if you become the project manager, these are the role. The cost effective plan, coordinate. Basically, you have to coordinate all the work by the professional. You are the supervisor for the work that need to be prepared by engineer. You will supervise the managers to review the design. You will supervise and manage the timeline. Okay, you prepare the report to the owner, and you have to perform the job that have been assigned as the whole manager for that particular project. Okay, so there are a lot of keys and duties for the construction project manager that have been assigned here. Sometimes this one had been stated clearly in the contract. Sometimes you can see that the post or the vacancy for the project manager, they list out what you need to do. And basically the project manager must be the person who has vast experience, maybe like 5 years, 10 years experience. Then only you can handle the whole process of the project, not only at the construction stage. Okay, not only at the construction stage. Okay, the last one we have here is the contractor itself. as the in as the in the beginning of the lecture, I did mention that the contractor is a builder. It is the general contractor. It is responsible for the overall coordination of the project. You can see here the obligation had been stated. This one also had been stated in the standard form of contract, SF. SF. It is clearly shown in any of the contract, standard form of contract. We have named it as either PAM form, JKR form, and if international project, we have FIDIC form. So the role and or obligation, the power and liability have been clearly stated in that particular form. Okay, so in general, it is he or she is responsible to prepare the work or material, to find the labor, the equipment, and translate the drawing to become the actual entity of or the outcome of the building or any type of the project. Okay, um, contractor also responsible to notify if there are any discrepancy or divergence of any information that is required. They must provide good relationship with the employer, and then if they receive any instruction by the architect, he need to follow. He need to return the design of the document and maintain the confidentiality. This is what I did mention. In general, contractor is required to make good effects if you receive the instruction from the client to do so. Okay, and then if let's say the contractor has dominated subcon or domestic subcon, they have to pay definitely. And of course, when you deal with the work, you have to pay to the supplier. These are another list of the obligation. Restore the fire and damage, the quantity surveying measurement. This is actually part of your assignment as well. So you have to go through this one in detail later, find other information to see whether this obligation is suitable for different type of the project or not, according to the scenario. Okay, you can also refer to this lecture note, but you have to find more because this is part of the assignment. In terms of the power, these are the general powers or the right of the contractor. They can agree to change to change in the contract terms, to object the replacement of the architect and quantity surveyor in some of the cases, not all cases. Okay, to sublet the works, but this one also is subject to the agreement by the client. If the client did not allow, not agree, then they cannot do. And then in certain scenario where let's say the contractor did not get payment in certain period of time according to the contract, they can terminate his own employment. Okay, so he may need to suspend the work if let's say after completion of the work he still not get payment. Okay, to object to nomination here means let's say the client suggests, can I appoint Ching Fong to become the nominated subcontractor? So client say, I would like to appoint Ching Fong to become nominated subcon. So let's say you did not agree, you have bad experience with him, for example, then you can object the nomination. Object means not agree with the nomination made by the client. Okay, so next one. You can see some of the information here for the liability means the responsibility that they need to carry out until the completion of the work. To to employer under the express indemnities. This is under the compensation. The contractor also must be responsible for any damage of the property and also personal injury, because they occupied the site for a certain period of time during the construction project. They have to be responsible, liable to the employer for the performance of the work based on the contract. They cannot simply say, today I don't want to carry out the work. They have to do based on diligence and proper manner. Okay, so that is in terms of the performance for the conformance of the project specification. Okay, next one, we have subcontractor. This is what I did mention. We have two subcontractor. One is domestic subcon, another one is a nominated subcontractor. Okay, nominated subcontractor is appointed by the client. General or domestic subcontractor is the subcontractor who need to be carried out, who is appointed by the general contractor to carry out certain works, normally not the specialist work normally. Okay, so you can see the role of the subcontractor basically almost similar like the main contractor, but based on the specific work that have been mentioned by the client. Okay, class? Okay, everyone. So that will be the subcontractor. Next one, we have the supplier. Basically, the supplier, we also have domestic supplier. We also have nominated supplier. Okay, nominated supplier is the supplier named by the client. So you have to follow the, let's say sometimes you have to follow the brand. Architect already mentioned you must use this brand. Um, they are nominated supplier over there to buy the material. Okay. The supplier is responsible to supply the material according to what have been ordered. Definitely, what have been ordered by the contractor, they have to supply properly. Okay, so this is what I did mention. If the supplier is not named by the client, then it is considered as domestic supplier. If you would like to buy the concrete, for example, ready mix concrete, the brick, the sand, that is domestic supplier. Okay, but if let's say the supplier is named by the client, for example, you have to use white horse tile, you have to use YTL cement, for example, then it considered as nominated supplier because it is named by the client. Okay, but that one is also subject to the agreement by the contractor. Okay, the last one here we have construction labor. Who is the construction labor? We can say this is the construction workers in the construction site. So basically, we can categorize into three categories: unskilled, semi-skilled, and skilled labor. Okay, unskilled labor, it means the labor which does not have much skill in performing the work. For example, concrete mixing, they just mix. They did not have any specific tidy work. Okay, so that is unskilled worker. Semi-skilled worker, for example, glazier, scaffolder, maybe the person who need to bend the bar reinforcement, that one requires skill or semi-skilled labor. Minimal specialized skill and education. Okay, so next one, definitely skill worker. It is actually having the particular type of labor for the specific type of the job. Sometimes you need very good bar bender. Okay, so bar bender is considered as skill level. Okay, bar bender, and then to install the bar inside the foundation is, and then from maybe the chargeman. The chargeman is the person who install the wire cable for the electrical. That one required skill level. Okay, so you have to understand these three type of labor available in the construction industry. Okay, class. Okay, so to summarize what you have learned today, you have to understand number one, what is the basic relationship between the client and professional team. for each of the professional team and for each of the parties, you need to know what they will do, what will be their responsibility, what will be their power, what will be their obligation, responsibility, obligation, and not only restricted to the professional, but also including the construction labor, including the supplier, and as a whole, you may see that maybe the banker is required, maybe for the specific project, the ID is required, and so on. So that will be our general and discussion for the the role of the professional team or the construction team or the project team involved in the construction project. Okay, okay, class. So I hope at least, even if you did not get 100% from what we have discussed, if I'm talking too fast, I'm sorry for that. You can listen back, and I hope you get something. 30% information absorbed is also considered as sufficient for the first time um, uh, receiving the information. Yes, there are a lot today. Maybe because of the term also sometimes new for you, sometimes maybe you have to learn again. Okay, class, that's all for today.